So a ventilator circuit starts at the ventilator, and on these, this is our inspiratory filter, okay? This is what it looks like. I might ask you to draw it on a test. Inspiratory filter. I'm gonna pass it around. Okay, the purpose of the inspiratory filter is to make sure that if there's debris or dust or bacteria in the ventilator, it gets caught in that filter before it goes to the patient, okay? That's the purpose of the inspiratory filter. All right, then you have large bore tubing. It's this blue tubing, it's called corrugated tubing.
There you go.
But what you need to know, what are you doing?
I record all these.
Ah, okay.
Deal with it.
I'm good with that. All right. So when that inspiratory filter comes back here, I'll show you. But when you build this, you have an inspiratory limb and an expiratory limb. Okay. So your inspiratory limb and expiratory limb is corrugated tubing. Okay. Large bore tubing. Small bore tubing is what we put on nasal cannulas. Okay, this is large bore tubing. Where did that inspiratory filter go? Oh, are you like a
Like
great?
me a bet?
Yeah,
Oh.
bring it on back, man.
Did you see it?
I get tired off of the thing. All right. All right. So your gas flows from the ventilator through the inspiratory filter. Get on there. Get on there. Inspiratory filter. It goes through the inspiratory limb, the corrugated tubing, and then it comes up to this Y. Okay? This is your Y connector. Okay? Why is it called a Y? Because it looks like a Y. Okay? And that is what you will connect your inspiratory limb and your expiratory limb to, is the Y connector. All right? It's called Y. Sometimes you might see it W-Y-E. So it's whatever, however you want to spell it. That's your Y connector. Did you guys go get your hamburgers and chicken and mac and cheese and beans and
Time for a nap.
salads? All right. So when that comes back, unless Eric wants to keep it all day,
You put it in his
I will show you
pocket.
what goes next.
Oh.
That's your Y connector. Okay. Inspiratory limb, expiratory limb. Patient adapter. This is the first one I found. They might look like this. They might look different. I'll pull some other ones out at some point when I can have a chance to find them. But you don't forget your patient adapter. This adds the ability for the patient to move a little bit, so you're not gonna accidentally extubate yourself, or it's a little bit more comfortable if you have a little patient adapter on it for the patient, okay? So gas. Gas goes from the ventilator through the inspiratory filter, which filters out dust, bacteria, particles, anything like that. Through the large bore tubing on the inspiratory side to the Y connector, which separates inspiratory from expiratory. So inspiratory side to the patient breathes in. When patient breathes out, the gas flows through the expiratory line, the expiratory side, okay? And then it goes out to the expiratory filter, okay? The purpose of the expiratory filter, it's here. The expiratory filter, and the expiratory filter is actually the blue portion. it looks like this for PB840s. It can look exactly like an inspiratory filter on different models, okay? But this one has an expiratory filter, and underneath of the expiratory filter is called a dump, okay? That's a dump bottle. And dump bottles, and it's not on here, the dump bottle is used to gather condensation, all right? Anymore, we use either HMEs, it seems like, or we use heated wire circuits, and that reduces condensation. But if you get a lot of liquid in your ventilator circuit, you will dump it into the dump bottle. That's your dump bottle. So that's a circuit. That's your circuit. That's the basic pieces of all circuits. You might find additional pieces like MDI ports, HMEs. If I do an HME on here, I would put it at the patient Y and the patient adapter. That's where I would do an HME. Okay. But that is the basic components of your circuit. When we are doing mechanical ventilation, if you're not getting pressure and you're losing volume, and I'll say this 100 gazillion times, you have a leak, okay? Low pressure, low volume equals leak. You need to figure out how to see if it's your patient leaking or your circuit. Okay, so with the circuit, you would always start tightening your connections, starting at the ventilator, working your way through the inspiratory side and back, okay? Your patients leak because maybe you have not inflated their cuff, maybe their cuff is blown, maybe they have chest tubes in, so we'll look at that probably the next week or two, how to troubleshoot that, okay? So that is your patient circuit. Now I gotta plug this thing in. All right, before you put a patient on a ventilator, you have to run tests on it. And I have EST and SST listed. We're not gonna run ESTs and SSTs in this lab because I don't have enough pressure generated to do the ESTs and SSTs. Does that make sense? I can turn on my 100% oxygen, which I need, but I just don't have enough pressure, especially if I get multiple ventilators going. But we're going to talk about ESTs and SSTs, and what I want you guys to do is make sure you practice those clinically. Go clean some equipment and do their calibrations, okay? All right, with all ventilators, when you turn them on, well, I guess we'll start with EST, okay? An EST is called an extended self-test. That's an EST, extended self-test. And the purpose of that EST is to make sure everything on the ventilator is running properly. All the mechanics, all the internal guts, everything. And it's also to make sure that your ventilator is calibrated, all right? We don't run ESTs as respiratory therapists. We take them down to BMET. So that one ventilator that Nick left from the summer and didn't tell anybody about, I have to go take it down to BMET so they can run an EST so we can use it, okay? That one that's in there, and I killed him for it. Okay, all right, so You perform that test, so jumping down, you perform that test when you have an inoperable error. That I have to do that. I have to take it down to BMAT for that. You do it when it needs to be serviced yearly. So when you're working, you'll see like yearly quality control checks. They need to go down to BMET and have all their internal guts calibrated. So they'll do it yearly, or when you have an inoperable. The SST is called the short self-test. And that we do to make sure the ventilator is working properly. We will do that, the RTs will do that before you ever put a ventilator on a patient. And you will do it when you do a circuit change, okay? We don't change circuits very often anymore. We used to do it every single day because they found if you take that patient off the ventilator, you expose them to an increased probability of getting VABS, ventilator-associated pneumonia. So we try not to take them off the ventilator too much. And we've moved to disposable, so it usually stays pretty dry. So RTs are responsible for that. And like I said, it makes sure it's working properly, and it makes sure that the ventilator calibrates to its tubing and its humidifier source. So this would be an HME. We would put an HME on there so that your numbers come back correctly. Okay, that's an SST. So it's not all the internal guts, it's kind of we're calibrating the external pieces that we put on. Does that make sense? EST is like the internal guts. SSTs are like to make sure it's safe for the patient, and then it will calibrate our tubing and it will calibrate to our humidifiers. Okay? And like I said, we perform the SSTs before you put them on a patient and after you change tubing.
I guess I don't know how long a short self-test takes. When you're breaking the circuit, you want it to be fast.
Yeah. So if you're gonna change the circuit, it'll take a couple minutes. So you need to have someone else in the room with you to bag the patient. Okay, while you are changing it and running an SST. Now, clinically, will you see your RTs running an SST when they change a circuit? No. AARC guidelines say you do. For instance, we're going to talk next about tubing compliance, okay? You're going to learn how to calculate that, but that SST on these vents calculates your tubing compliance. So you want to see how much volume you're losing to your tubing. Well, as this stuff gets stretched out, I lose more and more volume. If I don't recalibrate, then I'm not going to be giving my patient the right amount of volume. When I switch between an HME, and I don't have my heater out here, it's probably on that one, or a dome heater, I lose volume in that dome heater. I do that SST and my ventilator will calibrate for that. Does that make sense? Okay. So if they don't, what they're gonna do is they're gonna say, oh my gosh, I changed my circuit, and look, oh my gosh, why am I losing 100 milliliters? I gotta find my leak. No leak. Why am I losing all this volume? Because you didn't recalibrate. So, okay. To do an SST, you turn your ventilator on, and it usually will come up on your home screen. Okay. So look, here's my PB840. It says same patient, new patient, SST. So what I want you to understand, and like I said, we're not going to run them in this lab because I don't have enough pressure. Okay, I've never had enough pressure in a lab to run these. and make them pass. They'll fail, and then I have to send them down to BMET, okay? I will hit SST, and I will follow the prompts. So it'll say, disconnect at the inspiratory side, plug this, do that, and it will run through it, and it will prompt you on what to do, okay? That's how you run an SST. If you run it the first time and it fails, run it again. See what it's saying. If you have a leak, tighten all your connections up, okay? Run it the second time. If it fails the second time, then that ventilator probably needs to go be looked at. You know, you might try to change the circuit. I know one time Stephanie Marino was doing an SST and I was there just watching her do it, and it kept failing. And for some reason from the manufacturer, that circuit had pinpoint holes in it that she couldn't see, and then finally she was running her hand across it and she felt just a little thread of air, and it was all these little pinpoints. She kept losing volume. So that's where you run the SST. So it's on the startup screen, SST, do it before you put the patient on there. All right, our next activity is tubing compliance. Now, you don't have to learn a new calculation. If it says compliance, what calculation do you use? What's compliance?
Volume over pressure.
C equals V over P. Compliance. Doesn't matter what compliance you're doing, you just need to know the volume and the pressure that you are using. All right? So people get a little confused because it's kind of a two-step process. All right? And you don't have to do it clinically because you run that SST and it does your tubing compliance for you, right? So what tubing compliance is how much volume am I losing to the stretchiness of this tubing? That is what we're looking for, okay? Let's see. Hold on. I don't always follow my own self. Okay, so I'm trying to do this. So what you're gonna do is you set your ventilator to the lowest tidal volume, 100 or 200. These vents, I think we can get them to 200. We're gonna set this, and this is before you put the patient on. This would be if you have a machine that doesn't have an SST on it. Does that make sense? But your boards are gonna ask you about this, all right? So you set it as low as you can because we want to see the numbers, okay? So I'm gonna set it to 200, and we're gonna try this. Then I'm gonna find these limits on these ventilators, and I'm gonna set them as high as I can, because then I'm gonna plug up that patient port to see what kind of number I get, all right? And then I'm gonna do my compliance calculation, all right? That's step one. That is step one. And you do step one before you put it on a patient. So, for example, we're gonna do it. Should I turn off the light over here so you can see this better? Can you all see this?
Turn off
All right.
all the lights.
So, we'll leave it there. I'm gonna turn this as low as I can, and I think it's usually 200. Oops. Well, I wanna go down below 200. Hold on. There we go. Okay, 200. Okay. And then I'm gonna get it breathing, okay? So my change in volume will be 0, 200, 0, 200, right? Okay. My change in pressure is gonna come, let me get it breathing. Why aren't we gonna breathe? Okay. I'm gonna plug this and you're gonna read my peak inspiratory pressure up here. Okay, ready? 69. That's your change in pressure. All right, I occluded it. So C equals V over P. 200 divided by 69. Go ahead and do your math. Who's gonna do the math? I'd write it out so you know what you're doing. I have the 70 there, but it's easier. So you're gonna be close to that 2.9. So what'd you come up with?
2.89.
200 divided by 69.
What did you say, Jeanette?
2.89.
2.89.
2.89?
Mhm.
Okay. So that would be 2.89 milliliters per centimeter of water pressure. That's what that means. Okay? So for every 1 centimeter of water pressure that your ventilator generates, you're going to lose 2.89 milliliters of volume. Okay? With big adults, not a big deal. Little babies, huge deal. Okay? When you have little baby tidal volumes of 50 and you're losing 5 milliliters, that's a big deal to a little baby. But you want to know. Okay, so that is step 1. Okay? And that number is our compliance number. That's our tubing compliance number. Okay? Step 2 is I know that's how stretchy or stiff my tubing is. That's what that is telling us. Next, I'm going to go put this on my patient on their regular settings. Where is my, perfect, okay? So we're gonna go to same patient, maybe. Okay. And we're gonna say I want 500 milliliters of tidal volume, all right? So I'm in ACVC. So for the 10 breaths, I'm gonna deliver 500. When I connect my patient, I wanna look at my peak inspiratory pressure. 27, okay? You record the 27 now. Okay? Got that? All right. I have my tubing compliance number, which was 2.8 what?
8.9.
2.89. I want to take that and multiply it by, what was the number we got up there? What was it? 27. Multiply it by 27. And what do you come up with?
78.
You gotta talk louder for some.
78.03.
Okay. 78, well, we'll just go with 78, okay? For each breath we are giving, we are losing 78 milliliters of volume. It's staying in the tubing. Does that make sense? Okay. So when the doctor orders 500 milliliters of tidal volume to be delivered, how much are we losing? 78? Okay. So I'm gonna round it up to 80 real quick. Is it appropriate for me to deliver 420 milliliters? No. No. If he wants 500, I have to deliver 500. So that when you do that math, you take 500 minus your 78 and you come up with a number. That is called your corrected tidal volume. Okay? And people get confused over this. That is the corrected tidal volume. Okay? That's corrected. Okay? Now, in order for me to deliver the correct tidal volume, what would I have to set my tidal volume at?
520.
580 would.
How much am I losing?
Oh, you're right.
78.
580. I can't math.
So I need to set it at 580 milliliters, okay? That's how I correct my tidal volume. Do you hear the difference between those? And it gets confusing, so now I gotta turn this up to 580, okay? Now I am delivering 500 milliliters to my patient because I'm losing just about 80 milliliters to my tube. Yes?
So this is how you do it by hand, but most vents automatically calculate this.
When I have run my SST,
Uh-huh.
my ventilators have already done that.
Okay.
Does
This
that
is us doing the SST, not the vent.
Say that again.
So doing this math, this is us doing the SST, not the vent.
That is you doing that calculation.
Okay.
Okay. You won't ever have to do this clinically, ever,
Mhm.
because your vents do it. But you will do it on your test and you will do it on your boards because they want you to understand the concept. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. That's tubing compliance. Because back in the old days, when me and Liz and Lisa were in school, we had to do this because the ventilators were stupid. They were first generation and all they knew how to do was blow in air and take it out, in and out, in and out. That's all they knew how to do. We didn't have computer chips and all that stuff back then, okay? All right, do you understand SST? Do you understand tubing compliance? No. Like I said, you don't have to learn any new calculation because it's compliance, so it's C equals B over P, okay? When you take when you're gonna turn your ventilator off, you always take your patient off first, and then you turn it off. Okay? That's a huge pet peeve of mine. You've got to take your patient off before you turn your vent off. It's safety. Okay? All right. I think that's all. That is what we're gonna cover in lab at this moment, okay? Now we're gonna go learn a few more things. Don't get rid of this, because we'll work on it probably today and probably next week too.
Go ahead and hit the stop button.